Extra 1063 and a second chance bail bonds are here to back your blue. Back Your Blue highlights special initiatives, criminal justice programs, and community events aimed at keeping our communities safer. Join a second chance bail bond CEO Daniel Matalon and host Tug Coward to learn some good news about and from the law enforcement and justice communities. Now it's time to back your blue on Extra 1063 FM and the Extra 1063 app.
Welcome to Back Your Blue with Daniel Matalon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. I'm Tug Cowart, your host, and today's special guest is Captain Darin Hull. He is of the Cobb County Police Department. 20 years of dedicated service to Cobb County. His extensive experience in law enforcement spans from various crucial roles, including plainclothes operation for violent crime suppression, crimes against persons investigations, organized crimes and gang intel, DUI enforcement, SWAT, and serving on the underwater search and recovery team. Currently, he's at the helm of the Violent Crimes Bureau, Reall Time Crime Center, Crime Analysis, and Homeland Security Unit. Goodness gracious. Now, that's some... those are some pretty impressive titles, man. Captain Hull, you've been busy.
It's been an interesting career so far.
I guess so. Yeah. Goodness gracious. What is it that got you into what you're doing? I mean, did you want to be a police officer as a kid?
No, I did not at all. It was more when I became married, had kids kind of young, and really it was just a heart of service. Originally, I had gone to college to be a missionary. And what ended up happening, and I didn't expect the change of direction, but basically I decided that here in Cobb County, that's my mission field.
Born and raised here?
No, sir. I'm born in southwest Ohio, around the Dayton, Ohio area, and then moved down here where my family, basically followed my family down here.
Okay, what brought them here? Work? Is it just a better climate? You know, it's not as cold? What is it?
For them, it was two things. It was work-related, and then, I don't know how much you've been around the snow, but, hey. It's
very little.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised. I don't know if you can tell. I'm born and raised here.
It looks better on a postcard.
Yeah, that's
much.
Right. It's funny because my wife's from upstate New York, and she loves the snow. Can't wait for it to snow. Just prays it snows. And I pray against it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a great comedian. His name is John Crist. Y'all heard of John Crist?
I'm not.
He's a Christian comedian. He's doing a show. As a matter of fact, he's got a couple shows coming up over at the Fox Theater. Both, I think, are sold out. He's like, you ever had somebody ask you something, ask you to pray for something? You're like, that's dumb. I'm not praying for that. I think that's one of the funniest lines in the history of the world. He's like, that's dumb. I'm not praying for that. Whatever it is, but it always comes up. If you're faithful, like obviously going into the ministry, there's a background of faith, and my faith is so important to me. I'm broken sinner. I get it. I've had one too many to drink many times. I've probably said some things that I wish I hadn't have said and embarrassed myself with poor language. I was in the Navy. So it kind of comes with the territory, and I've tried to clean that up over the years with kids and family and do the right thing. But I do the wrong thing more than I do right. It's when it comes to my faith in my life and faith. But you always hear people like, I'm gonna pray for you. Be like, I'm not praying for that. That's dumb. I was just thinking it's so genius when they put that. There was an ad, they were selling tickets, and that was kind of the hook for everybody. And just, will you pray for this? No, I'm not praying for this dumb. It's just funny, but a servant's heart, and I see that over and over and over again when we talk to people on the show. A servant's heart first, because it's something that you care about, your community, the state you live in, the country as a whole. You want to make it as wonderful a place as you can. And look, there's all kinds of places that we can do better. Some places that we've done just fine, but there are places that we can do better and things that we could do better. But then the second thing after a servant's heart, as we talk to Captain Darin Hull from the Cobb County Police Department. Faith is a big player, it seems, in people who serve. I'm not saying everybody, but for a lot of people, that's where the servant heart comes from, right?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I guess I haven't thought about it the way you put it, but it's wanting to invest your time in something beyond yourself.
Yeah, something bigger than you.
Yeah,
and a lot of times I think that's an appeal, because helping. I mean, helping is so important. I mean, look, Daniel, y'all do it all the time. This show is all about helping and talking to and pointing out the positive, pointing out the things that are happening in our community that's good, and the people who are behind the good that's happening in the community.
Yeah, I mean that's why this whole Back Your Blue segment that we're doing, and having people like Captain Hull. I mean, what they do is incredible.
Sometimes thankless too.
Oh, absolutely thankless. Yeah, for sure.
It is one of those things that I hope goes away sooner rather than later. The thanklessness, if that's even a word. I don't know if that's even a word.
It is today.
It is today, exactly. That's the old hillbilly Northwest Georgia dictionary. It's definitely a word in my book. But just the thankless job that sometimes gets done, and the work that you do, and that firefighters and EMS and people in our military, and I try to point out all the people that are doing things to improve the life of someone else. It is so imperative that we have those people with that servant heart, just like you, Captain Hull, because without them, think about it. If you didn't have a fire department, who are you calling? Mm-hmm. You go out and get your garden hose, I guess. I mean, who are you calling? If something happens and God forbid, someone points a gun at you and says, give me your wallet, or give me your car, or give me your cell phone these days, and you don't have a police department, you don't have the Cobb County Police, who are you going to call? Fight back, but if somebody's pointing a gun at you, it's probably not a good idea to fight back in that moment, And I'm a Second Amendment guy, but I don't know that starting a gunfight is the smartest thing to do. In that, is there a time? Maybe. But I just do believe without those people that have the EMS, let's say something, who are you calling if those servants, those community servants, aren't there for you to call? That's why I think it's so important that we take that, whatever we've had for the last few years that says some of our most dedicated servants are not good. It boils down to that they're not good, and I disagree with that. I couldn't disagree with. Are there bad apples? Are there people that are otherwise good people that make poor decisions and do the wrong thing? Absolutely. All you have, if you have faith, point to the person that's perfect, and there was only one. So I don't know that everybody's going to be perfect, but I do believe that's the goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you said who you're going to call if you don't call that police department, you don't call that fire department. One thing our Chief Ann Hoosier, will refer to sometimes is we have a monopoly on the service that we provide the community. Well, the problem with the monopoly, or the thing that you need to be aware of, is because you have that monopoly, that means that you have an even greater responsibility to serve that community in the way they deserve to be served, to understand how your community wants to be served, because there isn't a choice. They can't just go pick another police department. So since you're their police department, that relationship with your community, those high expectations, you have the responsibility, and it's a sacred responsibility, to always to serve them the best as you can absolutely imagine.
That's pretty insightful. I don't think I've ever heard anybody put it quite like that. Who said that? Who was that?
Chief Ann Hoosier is mentioned multiple times that monopoly. And the problem is with the monopoly is if a monopoly can ignore those around them. They can ignore the inputs and the feedback and the responsiveness. They can ignore that stuff. But it's to your own detriment, right? And the mindset that law enforcement needs to have today is we do have that monopoly, but the public are the police and the police are the public. That's I guess a point or a tenet from a gentleman named Sir Robert Peel that's kind of considered the father of modern law enforcement. So that monopoly to us actually increases the burden or the responsibility that we feel to serve the community how they deserve to be served.
Well, you hold yourself to a higher standard, right? Mm-hmm. Because you want to see it done a particular way. Like if you go to, and there's not anything ugly about McDonald's, I'm just using an example. If you go to McDonald's and the service you get isn't good, you're like, I'm not going back there. You can go to Burger King. Or vice versa. You go to Burger King and it's not good, and you're like, well, I'll go to McDonald's. It's fine. You can choose where you go. Mm-hmm. It's such a salient point is the fact that you don't get to choose your fire department. You don't get to choose your police department. So the fact that y'all hold yourself to that standard should be encouraging to so many people. And Daniel, you see it daily because you work with these people so often and daily.
Yeah, and agencies all over the state of Georgia, because we have offices, in 9 counties. It's it's interesting for sure.
You take that bond that you have with the community so serious, and it can easily be, because no matter what you've done well, all it takes is one thing to really throw a wrench in that, and people are like, well, I don't know if I tried. Did you hear what they did? Or how they messed up? And that seems like it would take a whole lot of goodwill and wad it up and throw it in the garbage can quickly. Public opinion or whatever can change, even if the facts are wrong, because that happens a lot too, right? Is people get the facts wrong and here's what they heard happen, yet here's what actually happened. I could see where that would be a challenging, and having to really work PR wise.
Exactly, and the rough part is you strive for perfection when I think if you're a law enforcement officer of conscience, you strive for perfection knowing that it's unobtainable, but that has to be the standard that you set goal for yourself, right? And when you miss that standard, it can impact you because you've lost ground that you can't gain back necessarily, or it's going to be very hard to gain back. So that's a great point about trying to avoid those losses.
It really is remarkable. All the things that y'all have going on, all the expectation because you hold yourself to the highest standards, and the importance of the job that you do in the community, which is so appreciated here at Extra 106.3. And I know Daniel at a Second Chance Bail Bonds, I know he appreciates it because he works with you so often. We're talking to Captain Darin Hull, 20 years of dedicated service to Cobb County and the Cobb County Police Department. There's so many things that I want to get to, especially this Reall Time Crime Center, which sounds to me like a TV show. Mm-hmm. And it's like one of those things where this is too cool to be real, but yet it is. Maybe you've seen it on an episode of CSI, insert city here, because there's like 19 of those shows now. I think they got is it CSI that they got in Australia now? I think it was some TV show like that. Or maybe it's NCIS. I don't know. Still, but the same kind of just that cool technology that everybody's so into. The forensics that goes in, the computer imaging, and all the. Well, I sound like a dope trying to explain it, so I'm just gonna let you, when we come back here on Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3.
This is Back Your Blue, presented by A Second Chance Bail Bonds, live on Extra 106.3 FM and streaming for free anytime on the Extra 106.3 app.
Welcome back to Back Your Blue. My name is Tug Howard on Extra 106.3 along with Daniel Madelon. He is of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. He is the reason that this show takes place, highlighting the great things happening in your community. Sometimes it's really challenging discussions, really challenging the nature of some of the things that we're talking about. Last week with Anita from the GBI, which is Anita Ivy, which is the work that she does is incredible, and it's so needed, and yet it's so heavy at the same time. Today's show a little bit different because you get to talk about all the cool gadgets that the people work with. And in Cobb County, the Cobb County Police, have you seen any of this stuff up close, Daniel?
So I have not been to the Reall Time Crime Center. I'm aware of it.
How do we get a field trip over there?
Hey, I'm your ticket.
Let's go!
I've got the admission
I feel like we got the golden ticket, like Willy Wonka style.
Yeah.
I love it.
I've heard amazing things about it.
I can only imagine. I can absolutely. So let's start then, because you've done so much. I mean, Captain Hull, beyond your primary duties as police coordinator for the Atlanta Braves, you are had the role of event commander for games, concerts here at Truist Park. Mm-hmm. Whether the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Post Malone or Morgan Wallen, whomever. You've got a master's degree in public administration from Jacksonville State University. That's over in Alabama, right?
It is, right across the border.
The Gamecocks.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of them.
Yeah. So a friend of my son plays baseball at the College of Charleston. One of his dear friends is a football player at Jacksonville State.
There you go.
Right now.
It's a good school.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you. So all kinds of things that you are involved in. Let's talk about the Reall Time Crime Center. What it is. Let's start with that. What is it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'll tell you, there's not many right now across the nation, but there's a tsunami coming of this. And basically what a Reall Time Crime Center is it's an information hub. So it plugs in existing public safety technologies. That could be license plate readers, body-worn cameras, the GPS location of our patrol vehicles, 911 calls. There's so many different public safety technologies that are out there, and it brings it all into one area, almost like your smartphone. You know, on your smartphone, you can do lots of different things. You can check the weather, right? You can get a bank loan.
You play Tetris?
Yeah, you can do all that good stuff. You could do that stuff before the smartphone, though, right?
Yeah, of course. You just not all in one place.
Yeah, you'd play Tetris on your game console.
That's right,
You know, you'd watch the TV to get the weather. But
then you drive over to the bank to get a loan.
Exactly. What happened is all those things were able to get into a single pane of glass and be in our hands. And it's just more effective and it's more efficient. So that is what the Reall Time Crime Center is. It takes all these different technologies, different information, and it puts it on that single pane of glass so we can have more effective and efficient law enforcement responses.
Which is brilliant, and I love your description, Captain Holt. But I want to know more. Because that was like the 50,000-foot view, right? He brings all this information. What is all the information? What is it that you use? And I heard you say license plate reader, but I mean, I bet there's 50 different technologies, including that.
Yeah, so it is. It's actually kind of shocking all the different technologies we have that can come in there. But the bread and butter of a Reall Time Crime Center, where we get our most wins, are two different technologies. Number one is just cameras. Those could be government-owned cameras, for example, Department of Transportation style cameras or traffic management cameras. They could also be public-private partnership cameras.
Do you mean like the DOT cameras on the interstates?
Yes, sir. Used for traffic management.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And then it could be a public-private partnership. So imagine an apartment complex that has a heightened awareness of public safety, and they want to make sure the residents are safe, and they have cameras on the exterior of their buildings facing public-facing areas, right? There's the option for them to partner with us to where we can see those cameras real time, or we can go back in history and see the last, few days, let's say. So that's the camera side. The other side is that license plate reader. And license plate reader, if you think about it, it would almost be the equivalent of sitting an officer on the side of the road, and that officer's got a computer in his lap, and every car that goes by, the officer just checks the tag real quick, which they can already do, but we can't employ an officer 24/7 on the side of the road, right? And so they check the tags as they go by, and they're looking for certain things. Yeah, maybe your tag's expired, but you know what? Hey, is the registered owner a wanted person? Is this car stolen? Was it used in a carjacking? And if the camera, that's acting almost as the police officer, if the camera sees that, it can put that information out in real time to patrol officers that are in the area. And so they can be notified, hey, a stolen car or a carjacked vehicle just passed this location. And then they can attempt to investigate.
And that all feeds back to the Reall Time Crime Center.
It does.
And how many agencies are involved in that?
So, first of all, across the nation, you have probably 1 or 2% that have Reall Time Crime Centers right now. So 18,000-ish agencies in the nation.
But also the GBI, FBI, agencies like those too?
Yeah, they're all included, and they all have different levels of where they are with Reall Time Crime Centers. Some haven't adopted, majority haven't adopted it yet. But that number is growing very quickly. And then here in Cobb County Police Department runs one. And then several of the cities, forward-thinking cities, are starting to, we've kind of decided we're going to try to see what the future holds, and maybe we can work together on a technology and information sharing like we've never done before in local law enforcement. So already several of the cities in Cobb County have picked up contracts with companies that provide Reall Time Crime Center services.
Let me go back to those public-private partnerships.
Yep.
When, let's say it's a gas station, they have cameras up, or you used apartment, so let's use that example, an apartment complex that has, forward-facing cameras. When they allow our police departments like Cobb Police access to those cameras, is that a case-by-case basis, or is it 24/7, 365? What does that look like?
It's completely up to the private entity. So, for example, a apartment complex may allow us 24/7 access whenever you need for a public safety reason to look at these cameras. They're here for you. We don't monitor them because there's thousands of cameras. It's impossible. But it gives us access all the time. Another organization, let me give you an example, a school. They may want to do a rules-based sharing. And what that would mean is basically if there is a 911 call on our property or within a certain proximity to our school that we designate, that the private entity designates, then our cameras will pop live for you, and then you can view the cameras in that situation.
Okay.
So it's all up to the private partner in that situation.
Yeah, we'll skip ahead just a little bit because I can see where some in the public would be alarmed.
Mm-hmm.
about 24-hour access to cameras. And like, I'll be honest, I try my best not to ever speed through a school zone. I'm not going to say I'm not guilty because I've gotten a ticket in the mail. I know that I have been. Throwing myself under the bus a little bit. But people do get irritated, one, but then on top of that, like, what else is this being used for? You know, I'm a pretty good guy. I try not to break the law. I'm not doing anything that, I'm not robbing banks and I'm not robbing stores, but I might be speeding. If I'm headed up Georgia 400, I'm, headed home down Fred, I might be going a little above the speed limit. And I think a lot of people see that as a pitfall is the nice way to put it, I guess. A pitfall of our police department having 24-hour access to every camera. It almost feels like a little bit like Big Brother. I can't be the only person that's ever brought this up.
No, not at all. And it's a great point. And you get to something that's very vital, which is the good part about local law enforcement is we're held accountable by our local community. And so it doesn't matter what the national narrative is. There's a community narrative, right? And they are going to have things that they want from us or they don't want us to do that are going to be very different maybe from the next community over.
Sure.
So this is why it's so important for police departments to truly engage in community policing. So, for example, our Reall Time Crime Center, we didn't just pop that up out of nowhere and just decide, hey, this is what we're going to do. We have regular tech meetings in the community. We even do surveys before the meeting and after the meeting to see what they think about the technologies. How did their knowledge of the technology grow or decline? How did their approval of the use of that technology grow or decline? And what is truly important is getting in front of people face to face and having those conversations, because I feel like you can hide behind an email or you can hide behind a policy.
Yep.
But when you're talking to somebody face to face, you're looking in the eye, you know if they're being genuine or not.
Yeah, that's right.
So we go to those meetings and we bring people into our Reall Time Crime Center all the time. Across the nation, we have groups come to our Reall Time Crime Center, and we explain our why, we explain our guardrails. And so that's why I think it's so critical to truly engage your community, because there are always going to be concerns. I need to listen to those concerns, and they need to define the lane that they want us to be in.
That's, fantastic. I think that is fair, because you're right. It's the community that decides. It might be different in Cobb County than it is Fulton County or in Cherokee County. Those are very different groups of people that have different ideas and different standards of what they will and won't allow. I do find that fascinating. Has there been anything that you've taken away from the Reall Time Crime Center because the community didn't want it, or anything that you've added because they've asked for it?
Yes, I'll give you a great example. So facial recognition technology has been out for a while, and you want to talk about a highly contentious and controversial technology, right? And like any technology, over time it's grown, it's improved, it's changed. But we sat on the sidelines for a long time with facial rec and let the technology mature a little. So we decided probably about a year and change ago that we would look at a facial recognition company. So we did our own kind of research to figure out who the leader is. Remember that standard I kind of gave earlier about perfection, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, who can we get that's as close to that bar as possible? Knowing that we can't attain it, but we want to get as close as possible. But what we did is we had our community meetings about this. We did our surveys. We listened. So a couple things that happened, and these are some of the guardrails we set up. Number one, the facial recognition technology does not touch our Reall Time Crime Center whatsoever.
Wow.
It is an investigative tool. It's a scalpel. It's not a hammer. And so it is walled off completely from the Reall Time Crime Center. That was a specific request from our community meetings.
Interesting.
They didn't want to feel like they were walking down the street and
being observed.
Yeah, a video camera is doing that Minority Report stuff, and it's telling you who's walking down the street.
They're stuck out right there.
Yep. And then we crafted a policy that took a tool that could have gone to every single sworn officer and non-sworn person in our department. So let's say 700, 800 people. And we put that tool in the hands of approximately 7 or 8 people total, and even got into double blind, peer reviews, all this different stuff. So facial rec technology, we presented it. We got support to use it as a department, but we were told what that lane was. And that's the lane that we want to be in. And the community set up the guardrails for us on that.
I love that. And they're satisfied with it. because they can interact at any time. I mean, they can bring concerns or celebrate the successes.
Exactly.
They're actually involved with the decision making.
They're involved, and with all these technologies, it's not like the public opinion, once they establish that lane, it's not like it stays that way forever. You have to continue to engage the community because they may be more accepting of the technology and be willing it to be used in more diverse ways. They may grow more concerned about a technology and want to narrow that down.
Pull it back
and so it's that constant feedback. It doesn't stop.
Well, let's talk about that. Talking to Captain Darin Hull of the Cobb Police Department here on Back Your Blue. With me, Tug Cowart from Extra 106.3 and Daniel Madelon from A Second Chance Bail Bonds. The technology, I'm sure it's kind of like you, Daniel, because there's all kinds of technology I've learned that y'all have deployed. And the technology changes all the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anything to have that competitive advantage or just from a public safety standpoint, which I think what Cobb County does. I mean, obviously, I've spoken about them before in the past.
Yeah, sure.
And how
about this topic specifically. We got on a different show.
Yeah, and they do a great job. Cobb County Police Department. It's just a well-run machine, and I can't speak highly enough of them. And so if they're looking at it, it's probably
Right.
the top technology.
No question.
If I had to guess.
Yeah, let's talk about that technology. Captain Hull, is the improvements, the things that you've seen change over the past few years, because I would imagine with technology changing as rapidly as it does. I mean, think about it. If you buy a laptop, you buy a desktop, you buy a computer, by the time you get it home and plug that bad boy in, many of the softwares are outdated. So I'm sure the technology is changing at lightning speed with the police departments and the real-time crime centers.
Yeah, it can almost be hard to keep up with. It takes a lot of time. The key that I have found to try to keep up with it is to develop a good network in that public safety technology space, so that way you're not the only set of eyeballs looking at something, and you listen to those agencies or those people that you've gained some trust with, and you kind of listen to the feedback that you receive, and then choose what kind of rabbit holes you want to go down to look into the technology more.
Yeah. Is the technology becoming more attainable? Is it less expensive? You know, like any other technology. You know, a long time ago, a computer was $2,000. Now it's $300. Are you seeing that same kind of thing happen? Financially in that space, or no?
I would say that the pricing models of these different technologies is pretty complex.
Oh, wow.
And so
I can only imagine.
We do encounter that some of these technologies are definitely an investment that the community has to make. And so you're constantly judging the return on investment of that technology. And so, for example, just within the last couple months, we have sunset some technology that we had paid for.
Sunset meaning gotten rid of.
Yeah. We sent it packing, right?
Just make sure I understood. I want to make sure I was clear.
So, you're always looking for that return on investment, because there definitely can be a serious investment for a police department and for the taxpayers in that community.
Because I don't know about you, and Daniel, you may have something like this too at a Second Chance Bail Bonds. I know for me, like, the hardware has gotten cheaper, but I guess it's just easier to attain. But the software, that's where the expense has now become. Whether you're, like for me, I use a sound editing software and a video editing software for work, right? The software is still pretty darn expensive, and now it's gone to a subscription model, so it's always updated, which is great, but it is, $50 a month. It's a substantial investment. Now, my laptop hadn't changed that much. It of course, after a few years, it slows down. The hardware is not able to keep up with the software, so you have to update. Are you running into this? Does that sound kind of similar to what you are dealing with?
Yeah, that software as a service kind of model.
Yeah.
We're seeing that more and more, and I can understand that. There are definitely pros and cons to technology like that.
Yeah.
And
when did the Reall Time Crime Center begin in Cobb County? You may have mentioned this, and I don't recall in the beginning of the show, but if not, if you don't mind, when did all this start?
We signed a contract with a company that provides Reall Time Crime Center services. It's called Fusus, located right here at Peachtree Corners.
Oh, wow.
So not too far away.
Yeah, right down the road.
And I believe that contract was probably signed a little over 2 years ago.
Okay,
2
so
years
this
and a
is
couple months.
really
Very
fresh.
recent. Yep.
Holy cow.
And then the beginning of 22, we actually built the physical structure of the Reall Time Crime Center in our headquarters. So this definitely is a newer technology.
What does it look like? Does it look like a movie set over there?
I have to admit, they can be very diverse. A Reall Time Crime Center can be one person, one computer, and one radio.
That doesn't sound like a movie scene at all.
It doesn't. But they can get very expansive, too. So I would say that we're kind of a medium-sized community in the United States, right? We're not in New York PD, and we're not a little tiny town, let's say in Bartow. So we have kind of a medium-sized real-time crime center. But one day when you guys visit it, because you are going to go visit it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm being told by an officer that I need to go visit. Guess what I'm going to do?
Yeah. And,
yes, sir.
It's an impressive-looking facility.
Sure.
It's very nice video walls, a lot of computer terminals, and people working away. Yeah.
So when I was in the Navy, I was stationed aboard USS South Carolina and USS John F. Kennedy. We had the Combat Information Center. And that's what it reminds me of a little bit, because I was an operations specialist. And, we had the radars going around and huge computer screens. And look, I've been out of the Navy 20 years. So, like, way back when, well before I'd ever seen dual screens in civilian life, I had used them for years in the Navy. It's like the technology was so far ahead of everything else. That's what it reminds me of. It sounds like the workspace that I worked in the Navy. It sounds like that gritty and that cool. And where I worked at the Combat Information, it was like the dark room. Like I said, the radars going around. There was red phones and people calling and barking out orders. And it was what it sounds like. And when I think about that being in the Navy, I was like, man, I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, getting to see some of the most advanced technology the world had ever seen as far as the military. I mean, we had, F-14s, which, is not around anymore. They've retired the F-14, but the F-A-18s and all those great jets that were launching off an aircraft carrier. Like, how in the world does this even work? This is incredible technology. And that is really what it sounds like y'all are doing. It just seems like you're so far ahead of the curve with the technology and the application of the technology. And when you're ahead, I mean, you're not just ahead of people in Atlanta. You're ahead of most in the country, because you said there's only 2 or 3%, right, that are employing this?
Oh, yeah, and it's growing, but you're right. And it's a very interesting side of law enforcement. Reason being is I think when people think about law enforcement, let's say they're interested in getting law enforcement, we all think about just a patrol car, handcuffs, right? That's law enforcement. Well, that is the bread and butter. But there is a technology side that is growing in law enforcement, that people that have that affinity for technology or that modern
interest.
Thinking and that interest, they can find a home in law enforcement, because it's not just walking the beat. We have things like drones. We have things like Reall Time Crime Centers. And so there is a technology angle that honestly is probably more for what a lot of the, let's say, 20-ish-year-olds are kind of yearning for a lot in their potential job choice.
So let's talk about hiring then. Let's say some kid is either getting out of high school. Do they need to go to college to get a degree to work with that, or is that something that a tech school, or is that something that the Cobb County Police Department can teach?
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. Right now, a real-time crime center across the nation can staff in different ways. They can use sworn personnel. They could use non-sworn or professional staff, or a combination. Right now, Cobb County takes a hybrid approach.
So a combination.
Yep. So we use that combination because part of what a real-time crime center can do is help be that force multiplier. Cobb County is not immune from what we have across the nation, which is recruitment struggling to fill those sworn spots.
Sure.
So part of the benefit of a real-time crime center is how can we use technology to try to overcome that gap, use technology to make more effective and efficient responses. So one of the benefits is we can hire non-sworn folks, professional staff, that we can more readily hire. And so, for example, you don't have to have a degree. It's called a public safety analyst at the Cobb County Police Department. What we're finding, though, is there's such an interest in the technology field that we're getting numerous amounts of application for every opening. And it's allowed us to hire a very well-trained and diverse staff.
I'm sure.
So we have everything from a Secret Service agent that just retired after 25 years. We have a 911 dispatcher with over a decade of experience, a Cobb County police officer that had over a decade experience that came over to the non-sworn side. We even just hired a KSU, about to graduate in a few weeks, a KSU graduate from our criminal justice program right here in Cobb County.
Wow. And
she's now working the Reall Time Crime Center.
Impressive.
Yeah, and so it's a great group of folks, but you don't even have to be a sworn officer to work in it.
What incredible experience, though.
It is.
A Secret Service officer. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, think about the background. Think about that guy's scene or that woman, whatever, because obviously I don't know. But think about the things that they've seen that they can use that experience from their past life since they've retired and implement it to better the community that they live in now and work for now. And then the kid coming out of KSU could run circles around that person when it comes to technology because that's the only thing they've known their entire life. Mm-hmm. That's impressive in and of itself, Daniel. That right there is what makes a great police department, in my opinion, having that wealth of knowledge that contributes, and then having maybe a wealth of knowledge that I don't want to say is underappreciated because we understand how important technology is in life. It is everything from your phone to your laptop to, internet, Wi-Fi. But sometimes that comes with just life experience too, and not necessarily OJT, but it applies. It's really remarkable. Is that something y'all do? Do y'all try to do the same thing with the experience versus the life experience?
Well, and that's one of our competitive edges is the technology that we've implemented in our business. Some pertaining specifically to bail and that process, but
like
also
the ankle bracelet technology. Is that what you're talking about?
All the ankle bracelets and things like that. I mean, all that stuff is evolving and changing, but also just the commonalities, stuff that we use in the business on a day-to-day basis is
really remarkable.
But it's like Captain Hull said, it's a full-time job. All this technology stuff, I say it. I find myself saying it once a week. It's like, oh my God, there's something new we got to look at. It's like, here we go again.
Absolutely, but I would even say and this is a step way back from the technology, but social media, that's a full-time job in people's offices nowadays. That's not somebody just going, hey, I'm just going to post about this one time a day. Social media is a full-time job, and if you would have asked me 5 years ago if that was a full-time job, I would have probably said, no, of course not. We're all just going to post on Facebook occasionally. It's just not the case. It's just not real. Mm-hmm. We will continue when we come back on Back Your Blue with Captain Darin Hull. We'll talk about the work that they do with law enforcement agencies throughout the county, cooperation across jurisdictions because we're in a large city in Atlanta, and just the technology moving forward, the stops and the things that maybe more about the guardrails because I do think in these days people are really, really concerned or at least interested in some of those things. We'll continue next here on Back Your Blue on Extra 106.3.
Extra 106.3 and a second chance bail bonds are here to back your blue. Now back to the show on Atlanta's only conservative news and talk station, Extra 106.3.
Welcome back to the final segment of Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. My name is Tug Cowart, here from Extra 106.3, and our guest, Captain Darin Hull of the Cobb County Police Department. This guy has been published in the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police magazine, the Georgia Police Chief, with an article about the Reall Time Crime Centers that we've been talking about in the future of policing. Darin has been a 20-year veteran to Cobb County. So much experience in law enforcement, crucial roles, plainclothes operation for violent crime suppression, and crimes against persons, investigations, gangs. He's worked DUI, he's worked SWAT. The Underwater Search and Recovery Team. Let's talk about that one because I was in the Navy. That's not something I would necessarily think that Cobb County would have. But, we got lots of lakes. We got the Chattahoochee running right through town. Altoona, you got Lake Lanier. It seems like something that's probably easily looked over.
Yeah, I don't believe that there is many underwater search and recovery teams in the state of Georgia. I think people associate that more with places like Florida and things like that. But we do have a lot of call-outs in the Chattahoochee River. And then the team is also available to respond regionally to help out other departments too. So we're blessed to have that resource, and we're blessed to be able to provide a service to other communities if they need that service.
So how many of the other municipalities around town have that? Do you know right off the top of your head?
I have been out of that game for over a decade.
Okay, so maybe not.
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the current status of those kinds of teams.
And that was a very official. I'm not currently aware of the status.
Yeah,
I don't talk like that. I would have been more like, heck, I don't know.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Let's get a dartboard and throw it out.
That's right. But I love the how official it is. It's because that's the line of work. But Reall Time Crime Center is something that is so impressive when it comes to Cobb County, and the fact that very few police departments across the country do have this. Y'all actually won an award, a national award. Tell me about that. How were you selected for this, and what is this award?
Yeah, the professional organization right now for this technology space, and there's all sorts of professional organizations for everything you can think of under the sun, right? Mm-hmm. This one is called the National Reall Time Crime Center Association.
Okay.
And I would say that there's a couple of reasons why I would believe that we were nominated. So one is that community engagement we talked about. We're very public and we're very transparent about what we do.
So important.
Yeah, but there's also been good work that has come from our folks. One thing that Chief Van Hoosier mentions repeatedly is good technology is nothing without good people. And so the good people that we have working in that Reall Time Crime Center have produced some good wins for the community. Some of those are very big wins, and some of those are the day-to-day small things you wouldn't think of. But to give you an example, one of the big things that happened was this past May, if you remember the active shooter incident that occurred down inside the city of Atlanta.
Oh, my gosh, I
right?
do, yes.
And ultimately, that suspect stole a vehicle and came up into the Cobb County area, and the Reall Time Crime Center was able to use technology to basically narrow the focus and the resources of law enforcement down to a specific area. At that point in time, that's the good people that had to come in to then make an arrest, right? But do you remember many years ago the Eric Nichols active shooter, right?
Yes.
So if you think about it then, we're dealing with the same kind of geography, the same similar populations. What we had there is we had thousands of square miles that law enforcement was looking for that suspect. And that is in a population of millions and millions of people. And you literally had officers sitting on the side of the road with a picture of the suspect looking at cars as they're going by, right? Reall Time Crime Centers, remember we talked about more effective and efficient law enforcement responses. It's more effective and efficient to use that technology to now, instead of several thousand square miles, we're putting these units down into less than a square mile. Instead of millions of people, we know that the population in this area is thousands of people. And that is that kind of precision policing, of being able to get our resources down to one specific area. And then those good people put their lives on the line and listen to 911 calls, use different resources, and are able to give commands and safely arrest that suspect.
Goodness gracious. If I'm not mistaken, did they narrow that down to right here around where we're recording today, here at Truist Park, the Battery? Wasn't it in this area?
It was very close in proximity.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't asking for like the Latin long or anything, but I know it was somewhere close. Because I remember being at home when all this was going down, and my wife works here.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember just being like, this don't make me feel good. Mm-hmm. I'm not crazy about the way this feels. Like, it makes me want to run down, pick her up, and take her home, you know, just to be there. Now, I felt good about the fact that y'all were on and ultimately it was resolved and everything happened the way it's supposed to. But you can't help but be nervous, you know, about a situation like that when a loved one is nearby. And look, I would imagine the reverse is the case with your family. You know, when you're out doing something that is, you know, serving the community, or some of the officers that work with you, and the fear that some of their families have when they're involved in solving this, bringing this to a hopefully good resolution, which it did happen there. That was the good resolution, but it doesn't always. You know, it doesn't. Let's be honest. All of this technology is cool and it's great, but those are real people with real families, you know, that are involved and risking their lives for the betterment and protection of the community.
It is, but the fear that you refer to is palpable. And in that community, it's not even the community that's affected by, let's say, an incident and the fear they have for their safety. It reaches out, like you mentioned, you weren't even here, but you have a nexus to that area, and so it impacts you. So that's why Cobb County tries to be forward-thinking on how we conduct our services in this county. And we want to be an agency that uses whatever resources we can find in the way that the community wants us to use them to help mitigate those concerns, to help create good responses, and help address that public safety aspect, because fear is very real to people. When
no
you're
kidding.
In it. It's very powerful, and there's not many people that can help resolve that fear. It's kind of that monopoly we talked about earlier.
No question.
So it's a big responsibility.
Daniel, what do you see, when from your perspective, like how are you able to lend a hand, especially with officers on the ground and employing your own investigator. Like, what is the relationship between a second chance and maybe like the Reall Time Crime Center? Is there any, or is it more just direct with the department?
Well, I mean, I think we try to support the community initiatives that Cobb PD has,
Gotcha.
right? So, I mean, if we can bring awareness to anything that they're doing,
Kind of like today.
right, in spotlight and donating our time, or anything community driven, we obviously get behind. And then, and I don't know this for certain, but I will get to the bottom of it now that we're having the conversation. But all of our cameras and stuff that we have, I think they should have access to that, but I'm not positive. But look, it's just promoting the community to, although, yes, I can understand the flip side, right?
Sure,
which is like, and I've heard people in my office say it, not people that work for me, but people that community, defendants, like, yeah, well, we don't, you want them there, but then you don't want them there because
right.
the neighborhood may be an active neighborhood, right? There might be a lot of stuff going on. And I'm like, well, listen, I think it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a healthy balance that has to be struck. And that's what you've talked about, Captain Hull, from the get-go. Is what does the community want, what did they accept, and what do they reject, and that's where you build your parameters.
I agree 100%, and a part of that high standard we've set, we've talked about how this technology, let's say, maybe could make us apprehend a person more effectively and efficiently, but this is the other thing it can do is what can it make us not have happen? Can we use this technology to make sure that if we stop somebody, it's the right person? Because if we stop the wrong person, it doesn't matter how lawful the stop is. It doesn't matter how palms up you are and you explain it to the person. That will be a negative police contact that person will hold on to potentially for the rest of their lives. So we want to make sure that we use this technology to get that precision policing. We want to find the lion in the herd of gazelles and pluck out that lion without disrupting the herd.
What a great illustration. Mm-hmm. We are talking to Captain Darin Hull, Cobb County Police Department, and it's so fascinating. Thank you for spending the time with us.
Appreciate it, and thank you for having this program where we can come on, because this is part of us wanting to get out the message of we are here for you, we are listening, and we're doing everything we can to take care of this community.
There you go, Daniel. Thank you so much for making it happen. It's all resting on your shoulders, Well, it really is. We joke about it. Without you, it doesn't happen. So thank you for that, and we appreciate everybody being part of Back Your Blue today on Extra 106.3.